fellow humans, and today we're going to be talking about the Melbourne and Sydney rivalry. Melbourne and Sydney. It's possible that if you live in either of these, then you've probably rolled your eyes at the name of the other, or perhaps even cringed at the mere existence of the other. But why do Melburnians and Sydneysiders hate each other so much? It seems that this rivalry is born in everyone as soon as they choose to call one or the other their home. But why? Well, it may be that these cities have been at odds for longer than you may think. And this feud has its reaches deep into history, and today we're going to find out exactly where did things go awry in their relationship. Now, there are a few disclaimers that I would like to give. Firstly, I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, past, present and future, on which our Australian cities are built. And while I will not be talking into the treatment of Indigenous peoples in Australia's history, I think it's very important to realise that Australia, like other countries, does not have a squeaky clean history. And that aside, I would like to say that this is a mostly light-hearted video, and it's not meant to be taken too seriously. And secondly, I am a proud Melburnian, so I will be slightly biased and poke fun at Sydney here and there, but this is mostly meant to be unbiased. Firstly, it's important to realise that Sydney was a convict colony built up by the First Fleet, who were here to manage convicts, while Melbourne was built by free settlers, and perhaps it's this difference which caused the cities to end up being so different to each other, and perhaps the relationship was never going to work in the first place. So the roots of this feud stem back to the mid-19th century, when gold was discovered in Australia. Now, it's important to remember that New South Wales and Victoria were not yet united under one country as Australia. That idea was yet to blossom. They were two separate colonies. Gold was discovered in New South Wales near a watering hole in Bathurst on the 12th of February 1851. And this was a major turning point for Australia, though it was not yet one country. And Victoria, who had claimed to have found gold a year prior, now put out a £200 reward for anyone who could find gold within 200 miles or 320 kilometres of Melbourne. With this began the Great Australian Gold Rush, where hundreds and thousands of immigrants from overseas flocked to Australia to try out their luck. And throughout this ordeal, Victoria was a more ideally desired place to go because places like Ballarat and Bendigo boasted of large stores of gold. And the sudden growth in population and wealth in Melbourne propelled it to be a more popular city than the previously older and better liked Sydney. Now, at this point, New South Wales encouraged free trade, which means that they only charged tariffs on things like tobacco, alcohol, sugar, tea and coffee. Meanwhile, Melbourne imposed additional import duties in order to keep the miners who left the goldfields employed, and these tariffs were charged on clothing, millinery, leather goods, woodenware, furniture and toys, woolen blankets, rugs, glassware, earthenware and porcelain. Melbourne's manufacturing base was now well established, and this is where the rivalry really started to take place. It was the finance and media capital Sydney versus the steadily growing fashion and culture capital Melbourne. Now, Melbourne sipped their tariffed tea and watched as a shot of jealousy rose to Sydney's head. And ever since then, these two cities have been in a race to continually try to beat each other. Now, Melbourne fueled the fire by dubbing itself Marvellous Melbourne to parade its newly built grand banks, hotels and coffee palaces dripping in gold. Melbourne coffee, by the way, is actually really great, and if you ever come here in the future, make sure to hop by a coffee place because we have good coffee. Anyways, the big letdown of Melbourne, though, was the fact that it didn't have an established sewage system until 1897 and was frequently called Smelbourne even by its own residents. And Sydney took this chance to claim that malodorous Melbourne might have been a better fit. even though they had to deal with their own brown tides washing up on shore as a result of raw sewage being dumped into the harbour. A deeper wedge was thrown into this rivalry as all the states decided to come together as one country, but no one could decide where the capital city would be. And though the other cities backed off after a while, Melbourne and Sydney kept going. Sydney arguing that they were the oldest and first city, which has the same energy as a boomer, like, I know better because I'm older, has the same energy as, we should be capital because we're older. While Melbourne argued that they were the largest and more popular city. Both cities would not back down and simply refused not to be the national capital, and in the end they had to decide to make an entirely new city, which would be closer to Sydney, but Parliament would sit in Melbourne until it was built. And so Melbourne became the temporary national capital for the next 26 years. This decision did not excite Sydney, and with a salt percentage higher than the John 1 pond in Antarctica, Sydney went on to be salty for the next few years, criticising any decision being made. When the World War started, Sydney complained bitterly that everything was so Melbourne-centred, and they fought over where the military bases would be. At this point, they were fighting over petty things, such as who had the better fashion, and a tailor in Adelaide claimed, Sydney is more sporting and American than Melbourne, but Melbourne men are more English in their care and selection of their clothes. Royal Navy Lieutenant Charles Richard also said, of the two cities, I must confess a preference for Melbourne. It is cleaner, better planned, and takes life more comfortably. J.D. Woodruff, who was visiting from the Oxford University, said, a stranger finds that Sydney people are more sensitive, more angry if the harbour is called a river, more anxious to extort praise of their city. The Melbourne people are less sensitive. They are more concerned with the failings of their neighbours, more fully primed with proofs of the greater bigotry of Sydney, more fundamentally complacent. The latest manifestations of this rivalry have been positioning the livability index, size and population, or how the pandemic is being handled. Melbourne frequently brags about its 7 times title as the most livable city in the world, while condemning the crime-strewn and pricey Sydney. Sydney, on the other hand, boasts about a higher tourism rate and being the more easily recognisable city to international folk. And even I agree that as a tourist, it is better to visit Sydney, which is surrounded by iconic landmarks, but Melbourne is undoubtedly the better place to live, which has a more comfortable atmosphere to enjoy. Currently, a rift has been caused between the two because of the current COVID situation, and the fact that the Delta strain circling around Melbourne now has been brought from Sydney. But we are praying that they are able to fix the situation and get back to a normal COVID life, as we hope to do ourselves. It's quite possible that this feud may never end, but in the grand scheme of Australia and the general joy of this country, this is just a little quarrel between two neighbouring children. And while proud of where they both live, Melburnians and Sydneysiders have come to accept what the other has to offer. That being said, we can still look at some memes. How I saw Australia's capital city 10 years ago, how I saw Australia's capital city a few months ago, and how I saw Australia's capital city now. Well, this touches on the thing that this first picture is very unmistakably Sydney, and they did want to be the capital city. The second picture is Melbourne, who also wanted to be the capital city and actually was the temporary capital city. But this is Canberra, which is the actual capital city, which was built for the sole reason of being a capital city and literally did not exist before this entire fight between Melbourne and Sydney broke out. So that's kind of funny, but like, don't ever insult people by saying, oh, are you the capital city? No. But also, Melburnians are kind of hurt that whenever people think of the capital city of Australia, they automatically do think Sydney. Obviously, it has more tourism, but it hurts to not even be thought of as the capital city by most people. Sydney after dark. Melbourne after dark. I can't actually completely fact check this, but from what I've heard, Melbourne definitely has a better nightlife than Sydney. But at the same time, I've only ever been to Sydney at night like once, and I forgot what day it was, but it was a very special day and there was some kind of light show on the Opera House that day. And that's all I've seen, so it was a pretty bustling evening that day, but I have been to Melbourne at night plenty of times, and it's a complete joy. Melbourne CBD, I mean. The rest of the suburbs do kind of go really quiet though. Sydney, because traffic signs should be easy to understand. Melbourne, because screw you! Well, this is a hook turn. That's what's depicted in this poster right here. And I'm pretty sure that Melbourne is the only place in the entire world where a hook turn is performed. And I'll put up a visual of how it really works, but basically you have to go up and you have to drive to the end of the road you're on. So you go there and then you stop. You wait for the light to turn green here and then you turn from there and go that way. I'm not entirely sure why we do this, but I think it's very special that we have a kind of traffic rule which is observed nowhere else in the world, not even in the rest of Australia. This tastes like something I'd get in Sydney. Yeah, since we don't really like Sydney, we don't like what they have to offer, and we generally think that we are better than them, and we are. That's not something we just think, it's a fact. But yeah, food tastes better here, food tastes like home here, everything is better here. The coffee is definitely 100% better here than in Sydney. Melbourne, Sydney. I do think this is what Lieutenant Charles Richard was talking about when he said Melbourne was better planned, because it really is really helpful when you get into these areas of Melbourne and you just kind of know where you're going because roads mostly run parallel to each other. Even the main city CBD only has like a few roads and it's very easy to just memorize them all, so if you're ever going there you can just find your way around. The problem with the main city of Melbourne for me is that while I know where every road is, I don't know where I am on that road and I can't find my way around. So if you just chucked me at a random spot in the city, I would not know where I am because I don't know the landmarks of each road. So if you chucked me in front of a 7-Eleven, I would have no idea where I am because there's like 50 7-Elevens in this like little block of land. But if you told me, oh, you're on the 7-Eleven on Burke Street, I'd easily be able to find my way around, like, oh yeah, okay, this way is that, this way is that. I'll go this way if I want to get to, you know, Elizabeth. So I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope you're having a great day, and I hope you continue to have a great day, and maybe you learned something about the greatest regional rivalry in Australia.